Hello everyone, welcome to another survival game guide in our Medieval Dynasty series. One kind of aspect that I'm seeing some people kind of gloss over when they're first starting in Medieval Dynasty is kind of planning out the layout of their village. And while you don't necessarily need to have a plan beforehand, before you start building and whatnot, it's not a bad idea to have some sort of general idea of what you want to do, just because it can save you from having to relocate or move buildings around later on in the game, which can be a little bit of a hassle. It's you can do it, but it takes time, and time is short in this game. So there are three kind of main things to think about when planning the layout of your village. And it all kind of comes down to personal preference and play style. That's kind of the first thing to think about, is what your play style is going to be for that specific save file, if you will, of Medieval Dynasty. Are you going to be focusing on hunting? Are you going to be focusing on trading or farming? Or, the plethora of all of the different styles. And your answer to that can kind of determine how you want to lay out your village. Hunters, you're going to obviously want to have your hunting hut be the primary kind of central location of your village, which means anything that would involve hunting should kind of be close, just so that you don't have to run all the way across your village to grab what you need to grab. So if this here's my hunter's hut, if I was going to do a primarily kind of a hunting playthrough or a play style, I would probably have my food storage nearby. I would have my workshop over here nearby, as well as the actual resource storage barn. And I kind of do for this one. It's actually not too bad of a layout for that, just because you're going to need this to craft certain things, I think, because I think they can make stone knives or something. Or no, the smithy. The smithy is where you make better knives. So you want to have your smithy nearby, and then obviously resources where you're going to put all your fur and stuff, or your leather, and then you can obviously make your weapons that you need within the actual hut here. So having those different buildings close together just kind of saves on time, and it just makes a little bit more sense. And then if you're going to do a farming kind of playthrough, which is kind of what I lean towards, obviously you have to think about your housing. You got to make sure that your houses are close enough to the fields for the workers, so they can get to work immediately. It's also not a bad idea, and this is kind of where I failed a little bit. It's not a bad idea to have certain animal husbandry kind of buildings close by, primarily the pigsty, because they're going to be your main kind of fertilizer producers, or if you're using the compost bins, have those nearby, as well as the food storage, because that's going to go kind of directly into there, if you will. So it's just kind of easy. If you're out here harvesting, you can just go right next to the food storage, and that saves you time. It's a little bit further than I would have liked for my field, so I kind of wish I had put that more in a central location myself. And then obviously it's not a bad idea also to have kitchens nearby, so that you can take that food, and if you want to make that into better meals, then you have your kitchen right there too, also close to the food storage preferably. And again, my kitchen's a little bit further than I would have liked as well. Now obviously if you're not going to be doing the farming, but you still want to have a farming play style, you can still have these items far away. This is kind of where I've been relying on it mostly, is because I have quite a few farmers now. They're actually getting it all for me. So I actually have my food storage close to a kitchen over here, where I can just quickly run into the food storage and then go to the kitchen right next door and then start cooking it, and then I can just put it right back in there. So that's kind of how I do it. So that's kind of if you're doing less farming but you still have a farming playthrough, that might be something that you want to do. And again, you can always put these close to the fields too, just so that everything is kind of grouped together, and that just makes life, I think anyway, a little bit more efficient. And then finally, if you are a trader, if you're doing a little bit of everything, but your primary goal is to just sell as much as you can of high tier products or whatever, I would say the resource center storage building should kind of be the heart of your village, and then put your production buildings kind of close by around it, and then have your markets kind of after that, because that way everything is right there feeding into your resource storage, and then it's not a long walk to the actual market stalls. Now these guys are kind of far away. I'm doing this for aesthetic purposes rather than efficient purposes, because I want to build up a nice cute little area over here eventually. But that's my own personal preference thing. If you're going for efficiency, I'd say try to group that kind of all together. So that's kind of it based on playstyle. Now, when it comes to housing, there are so many different directions that you can go. You can expect to have a decent amount of houses because your population can get pretty big in Medieval Dynasty, especially if you have if you've customized your game to allow like as many buildings as possible. And how you lay out your houses, that's kind of, again, very much a personal preference. The most important thing, obviously, is to have houses close to your farms if you have farms, because they need to be close to the fields. Anything else, though, is entirely up to you and how you want to lay it out. You can go, like, realistic to the times, medieval style, where these houses were kind of close together. There was maybe like a fence or so separating them, but they were primarily kind of built very close to each other. Or you can go more modern, where the houses are kind of like in their own little blocks and neighborhoods. I'm going for like a mix myself. Like, these are definitely a little bit more modern than medieval, I would say, based on how they're all kind of like lined up like this. They're in medieval times, they just built, right? They didn't really think about planning. Mine are a little bit more planned, and I do plan on putting like fences and stuff around and connecting them and stuff like that. For aesthetic purposes, but that's kind of like up to you and how you like it to look, basically, because the housing itself doesn't really matter in terms of production, so you're kind of free to do what you want there. But I would just say make sure that you have enough room for houses, because you are going to need quite a few to house your population, especially as you start getting children and they start growing up and having children, and your older group, your first group, haven't quite died off yet. You're going to have a pretty big population on your hands, so you're going to need houses. And then the final thing to think about, and this might be the first thing after you kind of like establish what your playstyle is going to be, is the kind of landscape that you want. For hunters, for example, like, it would be a good idea to have your village be somewhere where there's like a lot of animals, or animals specific to the ones that you want to hunt. Now, don't build exactly where they are, because you'll destroy the spawn, but build like in an area nearby that is, picturesque to you at least, but also serves your needs. For farmers, you're gonna really want ideally like open land. Like, I didn't have to clear much trees when I was putting this down, and that was something that I was conscious of, because I knew I didn't want to cut down trees as much as I would have to. So I was looking for very like kind of flat land, but mostly land that was just already clear, which is why I chose this spot. That's just like kind of what you're gonna do if you want farming. But if you're going for like a trading, or you're not really worried about what the land exactly looks like in terms of productivity, choose somewhere pretty, honestly. And if you can try to avoid chopping down trees directly in your village, that's ideal, because then you have like these really pretty trees that are kind of just growing, and they just make your area look a little bit nicer, a little bit more, naturally beautiful. I had to chop a few trees, so this place looks a little like, I don't know, industrial, I guess, because there's not really much life in here, except for over here. I know I wanted to leave this tree alone because I really liked it. And you can kind of see that just brings so much more personality to the village. And then in a way, it kind of forces you to think about the layout and make it a little bit more organic. Like, if I had left trees here, I would have to figure out, how to build these houses like around the various trees. And that could have brought a little bit more life to the layout, in my opinion. So that's something to think about too. Is just to, like, when you need wood in those initial stages, perhaps think about going a little bit beyond where your village is, just to chop that wood so that you can still have the trees within your village, bringing some life to the village. But I hope that is helpful for kind of like planning your layout. Again, it's really kind of like strategic based on like what you're going to be investing in, but also just like aesthetic choices too. Because eventually, you're going to be getting to a point where most of your stuff will be automated, and it's like, okay, well, everything is good, but my village is really ugly. I wish I had, done this when I started, so that, perhaps my village wasn't so ugly to look at now. But yeah, so that's about it for village layouts and ideas and stuff like that. Hopefully that is helpful. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. Until then, keep surviving and keep thriving.